Welcome to the Live and Give Show with Dr. Jaime Gonzalez and Dr. Hoa and. Join us as we share our experiences and those of other experts in their fields who've discovered financial security while creating a pathway towards giving back to others. Welcome to the Live and Give Show podcast with Dr. Hoa and I'm Maria Coleman. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about work-life balance. As a busy mom, Dr. Hoa, I'm sure that's one of the questions that you get a lot. How is it being a busy mom and how do you juggle it all?
You know, that's a handful of question because it took a long time to have any type of balance, to be the truth of it, right? On the front end of it, it was a lot of building up the financial and the career. You know, as Jaime and I, we graduated back in 2006. And you can only imagine the load of debt. We had $350,000 of student loan debt. And so at that time, you know, when we talk about it depends on the point of the journey. And at the very beginning of our journey, we were really heavily focused on the work aspect and building our career right out the gates, right? And so during that time, most of our time was committed towards making sure that our career was going well. However, we've always been very intentional about prioritizing time also for our own relationship and our own self-being. And I think that's important because if you only focus on one pillar, which is the work pillar, which is the majority of what we work so hard for, is to make sure we pay our bills and we have this. But the reality of it is if it's all work and it doesn't involve enough fun and it doesn't involve enough self-care and relationship, then that can fall apart. And so I always remember when Jaime and I were starting out, we said, even if we didn't have a lot of money, and I know that we're very driven and most of our hours did go towards work, we always made sure we carved out time for date night, that we had, even if it was cheap fun, that we would go and do our weekly things and we would go walking or we go bowling or we go play and do things. But at that time, and then our family is super important to us. We didn't have kids at the time. And so we were really intentional about making sure we visited our families, our parents, and because we don't know how long they're going to be around, right? And we wanted to take care of them. And so work-life balance, it depends on your journey. Back then, it was heavy on the work side. And as we were able to accumulate and have a little bit more flexibility and financial freedom, we pivoted more where now maybe we don't work as hard, but we work quite a bit smarter. We still work hard, but in a different way. And so now when we had Athena, she's 9 years old now. And so, you know, when we talk about financial time and financial freedom, it's a constant, you know, juggling act. And sometimes you have to have more time with your child. Being a new mom, I really needed to dedicate, and I wanted to dedicate as much time to being a good mom, all right? And that was it. So work kind of took a little bit. I was still working, but a little bit before I could get back. And so I think the question of work-life balance, there's really never a perfect balance. And so the work-life balance is a little bit of there's never perfection to it. But you do, depending on where you are on your journey, where do you focus your energy? So I know if I'm at work and I'm seeing patients, my full attention and my presence and my energy is with my patients and my team that day. When I'm home with Athena or I'm with my lover, you know, my energy and focus is with them right there. And so it depends on the baton of where I am. If I'm at a conference and I'm meeting people or networking or I'm meeting my partners, then that pillar, as long as my attention and my presence is there, then that's where the balance comes in. It's like you can't have them all. They're not all perfect balance at the same time. They're rotated. And so that's kind of how we've been able to move rocks around and strategically plan it and have calendar, but we also know there's flexibility if there's an emergency and my attention is needed in our real estate property, or one of our attention is needed for our daughter because she's sick or whatever it is, or my attention is I'm sick and I need my own self-care, right? You have to be able to learn to pivot and adapt to wherever you are so that you're like, you can keep your sanity.
That makes sense. So a few of the things that I've gathered so far is the fact that the work-life balance is somewhat of a misnomer because there really is no such thing. The other thing that I've gathered is that one of the strategies that you employ is to be where your feet are. So wherever, whatever it is that's most pressing at the moment or what requires your attention at that given time is what you devote it to.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. And I'm sure that Athena, being just the lovely child that she is, she completely understands if maybe perhaps you can't attend a school event because you may be traveling, or if maybe Jaime needs to pick her up and take her to the park because you may not be available. What would you say, what advice would you give to a mom who has sometimes that mom guilt that she can't be everywhere at once?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big one that, at the beginning of my journey, I felt mom guilt. But as Athena is very good about writing notes and sharing her emotions and her thoughts, I liked one of the things when Ed Milet was talking about your children. If you want to live out your dream and you want to teach your children, you be the role model and live out your dream, and they learn by your example. And so one of my fears before about traveling, and I have a great support team. And so having my nanny here with us ever since she was born, and having Jaime's parents close by here, knowing that we have a great family support system. But she watches, like she knows that I'm out there and explaining to her why mommy goes and speaks, why mommy is out there trying to better myself for self-development or learning, whether it's business or speaking career or real estate adventures. Like she is part of that ever since she was young. She has seen both of our own growth journeys. And the feedback from her is she is so grateful and she's so proud of mommy, that mommy's out there pushing comfort zones and doing all the things, even though I'm scared. And so having that feedback, I was like, I'm on the right track. Right. And it's true because if can you imagine if you just tell your children you should do this, you should do that, but you're not living out what you say that they should do, right? They're their own independent. They have their own minds and their own lives and their own journeys. But if you live your own journey the way that you want to intentionally, like she knows that when I'm with her, we're very present with her. And if I can't be there, I'll make sure someone else is. Jaime will be there at the school if I'm say at work, or vice versa, or my nanny or my grandparents or somebody's with her. So she never, I think part of that mom guilt is something we put upon ourselves.
Very good point.
Yeah. So I think it's important that, you do communicate that, with your children. They're smarter than you think.
Very true.
They watch and see what you're doing. And, and as long as you know that you're bettering yourself, that whatever you're doing, that you're not in Busyville, just doing random things that's not productive. So I am a stickler about, hey, what is really moving the needle forward? And so, writing down things that, hey, what are my strengths? What are things that I can do? What can I hire and what can I delegate and what can I partner, right? And the best use of my time to move the needle forward for the end mission, like you talk about having the end, right? The end in mind when you're doing things. And so I spend my day very purposefully, right? From the moment I wake up, whatever I do, whether it's me time, whether it's time with my significant other, whether it's time at work, whether it's my daughter, they're all intentional times. And I value that because your time is one of the most important things, and how you utilize that time and energy is super important. And so, although there's not a perfect balance, it's balanced for me. What keeps me fulfilled, what keeps my energy and my mind positive, that's what I do. And some days I wake up and I have no idea because I don't have a lot of things are on my calendar that are the big rocks. But a lot of times I might pivot and change and be like, today I really feel like I want to go to Spa Castle and have a me day to rejuvenate, reset, and then get back onto it. And sometimes you have to slow down a bit to then move the needle forward faster.
I love it. So many good topics that you covered there. I hear the word intentionality a lot, and I can tell by the way that you live your life that you are indeed very intentional about a lot of the things that you do. And I think that with that comes boundaries. So it sounds to me like you have to be really good at setting boundaries and deciding what's going to occupy my time today and what's going to take my attention.
Absolutely. And that's a big one, because sometimes, there's a lot of things that want to take your time and energy. And you do have to set those boundaries for yourself, because otherwise you get sucked up in everybody else's energy and circle, and you don't really have time to move the needle forward on your own journey. Right. And I think that's important, especially if anyone's listening in and you struggle with, like, I have no time, I'm pulled 10 million different ways. Learning how to say no was very hard for me, but I had to, sometimes we have to say no to good for great. Right. And so, and knowing that, hey, every time I say yes to this opportunity, I'm saying no to something else. And is this in alignment of the bigger picture? And I think that's something that's really important. And it doesn't feel good. I go by my intuition and gut instinct heavily, and I believe it, and really follow that. And so if my gut says, nope, that's not what I want to do, then that's not what I'm going to do. Right. And I live it, and and it's served me well so far.
Yes. And no is one of the most powerful words in the English language. But yet that 2-letter word is sometimes so hard to say, but it is so important to achieve that balance, as you mentioned, that is right for you. Another thing that I heard you talk about is the self-care aspect. Many times as moms, we don't necessarily take that time to take care of ourselves, despite the fact that we know that when we do look after ourselves, that we're better able and better apt to take care of others that rely on us. Not only that, but raising in your situation, raising a girl, I think it is good to teach her those good habits of making sure that she takes care of herself so that she has more to give to the world if it's right within her boundaries.
Right. Self-care is one that, for the longest time when I was busy, I neglected. And sometimes we wait until you neglect it for so long that it catches up to you, things that we can take for granted, like our health, right? While we're in the busy motion. And that's something that I've learned, even the hard way, is like, wow, we can't take our youth and our health for granted, and so self-care in all aspects of health, our mental, our emotional, our physical, our spiritual, all of those, you have to continually feed that. And I know that if I'm on my A game internally, it's like, man, everything else, watch out. Because if I wake up and I'm like, man, I'm ready to rock and roll,
get out of the way. She's coming through. Excellent. Yeah. Another thing that I wanted to mention is I had a therapist once say that you can hire that done, or you can hire that did. And the way that I understood that was, if there is something that you can actually outsource or delegate, as you spoke of, that doesn't necessarily require your hands-on attention, that it might be worthwhile to do that. Many times we create space and we create time for things like an activity with a child, or a self-care day, or a date night with a partner, by simply delegating something out that you don't necessarily have to be present for. So I think that's a great idea to consider. What are those things that don't necessarily need your presence for you to create time to do other things that may be more meaningful?
Right. And those are big ones. Hiring, having the right people and support system is so important, with work, when we talk about working smarter, not just harder, because we can work hard all we want, and sometimes it could move the needle very slow, or actually backwards in reverse, where you're so stressed out and burned out and you don't have the same passion for it anymore. However, if you can find the right people who have complementary skill sets, or can do things that are even better than what you can do, those are things you want to delegate and hire out. And I learned very early on that I'm a master at delegating. And so Jaime says, you're the MD, the master delegator, because I can find and know whose strength is what. And those are things that people can do much better than I can. And so, traditionally, especially when I was growing up, it's always been believed that the woman needs to do all the household roles, right? Like cleaning the home, doing laundry, taking care of the kids, and things like that. But I also am very passionate about my career. So being super passionate about being a mom, but also super passionate about all the career and the growth, I didn't feel like I wanted to give up either. So I was like, why can't I hire help for both? Why can't I hire help for my family life at home to have someone help clean the home? And so we hired our nanny. Athena was 6 weeks old, and she started with us when I was still at home with her. And she's here with us 9 years later. She's still with us, right? But she helps us from cleaning the house, taking care of Athena, doing our laundry, groceries and things, right? But she's become a family member, right? And then that way, when I come home, there's a meal already there. I have time to spend quality time dinner and with Athena, right? Um, at work, I used to want to do it all. I wanted to file the, like when we had our eye care practices, I wanted to file the insurance. I wanted to look at all the labs. I wanted to do A to Z, right? And it's good as a business owner to know how to do A and Z and then build efficiencies and systems and then train. So if you can do it efficiently and do it well and then train someone else to do it and then have it so that you no longer need to be there and have checks and balances where if they leave, that somebody else can be hired to do the same thing because there's already a system in place. And so that's something that's really important working smarter is how can I hire the right people? So now we have managers, right, for our practice. Now we have even our real estate business. We have teams, we have partners, again, with stronger complementary. We're strong in what we do, they're strong in what we do, and we split and divvy the role. And so that's how it's like, well, if I'm not available, I'm very sure that the rest of my team can handle it. And so if we leave out of the country for 2 to 3 weeks, we continue to thrive in all the other areas because we know we've got the right people in the right place.
Makes sense. And for those of you that are saying, I do not have that kind of luxury to be able to hire some of those things out, or perhaps that's just from a principal perspective, not something that you choose, just know that there's no right or wrong way to be a mom. At the end of the day, something that Dr. Hua touched on a little while ago is that it's what works for you. And so if you can have that luxury to be able to hire out something or be able to hire a babysitter to take a date night that you think would help strengthen your relationship, it's a good thing to consider. Obviously, in the Live and Give show, we want to give you some ideas and some strategies that you can consider employing if you haven't already, and explain why those have worked for Dr. Hua in the past.
Thank you so much, Maria.
Welcome back to episode 3 of the Live and Give show. Jaime, earlier we had the pleasure of hearing from Dr. Hua. So in the past, you have been very candid about the struggles when you were first trying to conceive Athena. As a high achiever, what would you say changed when you had Athena when it comes to your career?
It took about 8 or 9 years to have her. And that put time into perspective. Like, am I really here just to work? Or now that we have been able to have a child, now what else can you do? Right. And that's what we talk about in other episodes as well. It's like, yeah, we're here in this earth to work and have a good time and be happy, but what else is there? What else? How can you have a bigger footprint, right? So having a work-life balance in our career, and it's been because there's been a lot of help that we have had, and I think Paul talked about it previously, but we owe it a lot of our success to them. And that's given us the freedom of spending the time with her so she can grow and actually teach others, other kids that she associates with. And hopefully, whenever she has a family, it gets passed down to her. So we're just not doing it for ourselves. It's like we're doing it for the future generations, her future generations. If we want to get to I guess the main part of the work life balance, I think one of the main components has to be systems. So if you don't have systems for all our entrepreneurial positions, it's going to be very, very difficult, right? So yeah, you can have a lot of help, but if you don't have those systems in play, that's going to be difficult to function and run efficiently and smoothly and have success. So I think prior to hiring people, if you have the ability to do that, mainly just mapping everything out. And that's the toughest part, I think. Mapping everything out. If you have been successful at, say, in our eye care practices, if we were successful implementing technology, implementing this product, teaching the staff how to utilize it, but also have a written down, report for them to actually understand how it works, right? And then you can just continue to run that particular system. And then once you have that down, then you might be able to hire someone maybe part time, maybe once a week, 2 times a week. One of the reasons that we hire people is because we're not as good at that particular subject or process, right? So we try to hire smarter people than us that can actually improve in, say, technology, right? Or communications, like you, for example. We hired you for your organization skills, and you had a very strong background at project managing as well. So we needed some help for that. Mm-hmm. So just hire your weaknesses, but also have a good complementary skill set. And we jive. You, Hoa, and me, and all our other staff members. We have a good time. We have to enjoy the process at the same time, and that's why we are doing what we're doing. Is we want to help more people. Of course, Athena is a big part of it. Mm-hmm. But again, what else can you do, right? Besides just make a good income.
I love that. Yes, Jaime, you often say that. What else can you do? How else can you serve? Something that you said just really struck a chord with me because you are a creative mindset. You're also a problem solver. In an earlier episode, Dr. Hua joked how she's the master delegator, but in truth, that is a very important skill set for her to be able to look at the different pieces and also match them up with people that have that strong skill set. So that's amazing. But I'm also hearing you give the solution. So perhaps you're not currently able to hire someone to do some work. However, you're saying set the stage, create that foundation by establishing the systems that ultimately the hired personnel can leverage. So I do appreciate that. Awesome. And then I also heard you speak about how some of the lessons that you are teaching Athena, you hope that she carries on into her adulthood, if you will. Has she ever shared anything with you or with Dr. Hua about what she sees and what she's learning from you already?
Oh yeah. It's one of the things. It's because she watches our videos, she listens to us whenever we go speak or in a podcast, or we're speaking to family members because we like to mentor a good amount of kids. That includes some of our family members. So she listens. She's there listening all the time. And we've seen her kind of educate and mentor her the people that she's around with, right? And she comports herself just very, very similar to us. Mm-hmm. She's very compassionate. She doesn't get upset at all. Like, it's been rare. I don't think I've actually, I'm gonna take it back. I don't think I've ever seen her upset. And even though something might not go right, she steps back and she thinks about what's going to come out next, right? But yeah, we just talk about our business is about real estate, and people, family members, friends give her money, right? And whenever she goes out, or if it's like the red envelopes that we were talking about for Chinese New Year or Lunar New Year, and she has her own stash, but she always talks about investing, right? And she's been talking about investing since she's 9 now, probably 5.5 years old, almost 6. But she understands the investing process. And not only just monetary, but we've had one-on-one conversations just about investing in other people, just like we were talking about earlier. So if you invest in people, you can actually even make more of an income. Kids are so smart nowadays. I don't think I was half as smart She is, right? So, but yeah, and we talked about having accessibility to a lot of technology and a lot of videos that she can just look up. And but I mean, just like YouTube University and TikTok and things like that. And she teaches me things now, so that's a cool part about seeing her learn and grow up.
So many awesome takeaways there. And she's only 9, you guys. So for those of you that are not familiar with Jaime and Hua's daughter, she's only 9, but she is very bright. And one of the takeaways that I had there was the fact that with Athena, it's not necessary, and with any child, really, as parents, sometimes we make the mistake of not really seeing them as real people because they're tiny, tiny souls. But with Athena and with other children, they're such sponges, and they will more than likely do what you do as opposed to do what you ask them to do. And I think that that's why it's so important to lead by example. Amazing. Before we wrap, I did want to share a story with you. There's a book by James Patterson where he shares some essays, and it's like a diary entry, if you will. And within it, he talks about the story of a lady who is giving the analogy of life and the different areas of life as juggling balls. The balls are work, family, health, friends, and integrity. And she says you're constantly juggling. In the case of our episode today, we're talking about work-life balance. But think that one day you're going to drop a ball. And most balls, they're glass, they're not rubber. So, for example, work, it can be a rubber ball. You drop it, it'll bounce. But things like family, health, friends, and integrity, those, if you drop them, they can be scuffed, nicked, or even shattered. What are your thoughts about that?
Wow. That's very interesting. Yeah. And especially with, yeah, some of the things that you mentioned, the work and health. With health, yeah, I'm a big health nut. And so that's very important, even though I've struggled with my health in the past. And I've said that multiple times, and mainly mental health. But you can't stay down there, right? Because you continue to think about the same thing over and over and over. And we talked about plenty of having the same thoughts over and over again. And that's only harming you if the subconscious mind is just very negative with most people, right? That's just the reality of it now. And it's probably even higher now because of what's going on all over the world. But yeah, it's bouncing back up, even though you're going to get stuffed up with the health. It's okay. You just got to continue to move forward and not just continue to stay down there. And also be proud of what has happened. So, with my health journey, for example, with my anxiety that I had in the past, it's okay. That's a natural feeling. Anxiety is a natural feeling that occurs pretty much to most people, but most people don't stay in that anxious state, right? The people that actually do stay are the people that actually suffer from that condition. Pretty much every aspect of life, it's going to bounce back up. So you're still going to be living, you're still going to be happy, and at the end of things, you decide, right? This is your choice, and there might be a lot of obstacles down the journey, um, but the journey is not really a straight line, like we all know, right? There's a lot of road bumps on the road and a lot of curves and a lot of nicks, like we talked about. But yeah, staying back up and be proud of all the difficult times because it's going to be brighter on the other side. So I think just just think about whenever there is a difficult time, for example, what can you do, right? And then how are you going to overcome it? But you have to have some sort of plan, right? And you just can't jump back up just out of the blue. So to me, that doesn't really happen, right? So you have to have some sort of plan. For me, it was doing the work for all my mental health back then. I got to put in the work so I can function at 100%. And so I started researching, okay, what else can I do and so I can actually be okay. But now it's a process, and every day I do my breath work. Every day I do my meditation. Every day I do my prayer. Every day I have my gratitude practice. And every day I take my supplements. Every day I eat healthy, most of the time, if I can. But it's a process, in the journey. It's but you have to look back and again be proud of it.
Right. Well, that was great. And thank you so much for sharing. I heard a lot about your routine there. If you guys are interested in learning more about Dr. Jaime and Dr. Paul's routines, comment in the comments below, and we'll be happy to bring you an episode that talks specifically about that. I know that Jaime is into biohacking, and as he mentioned, he's a self-proclaimed health nut. So I know I'm always learning from you, learning about anti-inflammatory foods and the things that we can do to essentially create agency within ourselves. We are in control, and so we need to take back that control to accomplish that mind-body connection, if you will. So thank you again, Dr. Hyman. Thank you all.